I want to feed off of this feeling, which seems to be coming from everything.
I first heard about G. Jones back in 2018 when Porter Robinson tweeted about him, and I think I had seen his name pop up here and there around the place, but never actually listened to him properly. A little bit later on, I saw that Virtual Self, Porter Robinson's alias, tweet about a new G. Jones track. It was a single from his upcoming album, The Ineffable Truth. It was the first track that I had heard from him, and I was absolutely blown away by the incredible production of this absolute banger of a track. That was also when I first found out about the new album that he had coming out, and I couldn't wait to listen to it. The album then came out, and it was one of those albums that you just listen to from start to finish, and you just want more and more and more. And as each song finishes and the next one starts, you just want more and more of this sound. From then on, I was hooked. Welcome. This is going to be the first video in a series where I talk passionately about music artists and producers that I have a special soft spot for. These are artists that I believe are very unique, but it's not just the music that they make, it's also the entire audio-visual world that they create that surrounds them, whether it's their live shows or DJ sets, the visuals, the music videos, the art, the social media content, the promotional stuff, etc. Greg Jones, or his stage name G. Jones, is an artist based in Portland, Oregon, who is very unique in the bass music and dubstep world. I've not heard anyone make anything that really comes close to what he has made. His musical prowess and technical production are both next level and of the highest of quality, especially for this genre, with the majority of his songs having very sticky melodies, high quality vocal and drum samples, and of course, destructive bass lines. Although now I mention genre, it's actually very hard to categorize Greg's music into one specific genre. The closest you could get, I think, is a mix of bass, trap, dubstep, IDM, and acid music. Finding other producers and artists that G. Jones is similar to is quite difficult too, as there's very few current producers who, from what I have found, make anything similar to what he makes. There are older artists and producers who are obvious clear inspirations to him, specifically in the IDM space, such as Aphex Twin, Square Pusher, Orteka, Venetian Snares, Luke Vibert, and Music. But there are a few producers that I'd like to draw your attention to, who I believe are the closest you'll get to what G. Jones makes. Those being Eprom, ISOXO, Little Snake, and Lord Genmu. I will have them all linked in the description below if you want to check them out. Not a lot is known about the early years of G. Jones' career. As he mentions in his Mixmag interview, he was into alternative rock at a young age and wanted to start a band in school, like a lot of musicians did. As it goes with high school bands, he struggled to get his friends together to jam with him. He then started using GarageBand, as it came standard on all MacBooks at the time. Using GarageBand, he would record himself playing instruments and making songs. He talked about how he started using Ableton Live at around age 16 after a teacher in his school, Palo Alto High School, saw him using GarageBand and gave him a demo of it. Greg was fascinated by the amount of control over the sound that Ableton gave you and fell in love with electronic music. Back in the late 2000s, around the start of the 2010s, Greg discovered dubstep and IDM music, and cites his biggest inspirations being Rusty, Eprom, who we'll talk about later, Aphex Twin, Square Pusher, and Doshi. Greg would then take the name Grizzly J and started to put out some tracks in the early 2010s, releasing dubstep tracks such as Greyhound. In 2012, Greg changed his name from Grizzly J to G. Jones and started to get noticed by other bigger producers in the bass music and dubstep scene, such as Bass Nectar, Bleep Bloop, and DJ Shadow. He started working with people like Mad Zach, Doshi, Buku, Zeke Beats, and many more. Greg collaborated time and again with all these people and released many collaborative tracks and EPs, such as the Mind EP with Bleep Bloop. Greg also put out many solo EPs in this time, such as the Mirage EP and the Eyes EP. 2015's The Odd EP in the Pit of My Hard Drive is, in my opinion, when we first hear Greg release a project that looked and sounded most like G. Jones's sound today. With the breakthrough track Lavender Town, the VIP mix of this track is still being played in his live sets to this day. The cover art for this EP also somewhat resembling the black and white branding and imagery that has become synonymous with G. Jones now. Later on in the year, Greg would release his collaborative Mind EP with Bleep Bloop, featuring 3 new tracks and a remix from Tonight fame, Lunis. "2016 would mark the first of many times that Greg would collaborate with Eprom, releasing the single Warrior on Eprom's Samurai EP on the 29th of July 2016. The song demonstrates how perfectly Sander and Greg's sounds fit together, and how much potential both of them had to create many great things together. Together they are both unstoppable, and would go on to create some of the best bass, acid, dubstep, jungle, IDM fusions that ever released into the electronic music world. Both Warrior and Brixton, another song off the Samurai EP, would also go on to be played by none other than Aphex Twin himself in 2017 when he DJ'd at Primavera Festival in Barcelona and at Field Day in England. "2017 would be the release of G. Jones's Vision EP, an 8-track behemoth that would become some of Greg's most popular tracks yet, featuring tracks such as Helix, which still gets played in Greg's DJ sets and live shows today, along with the VIP mix of Lavender Town that I mentioned earlier. Later on in the year, Eprom would release his Pineapple EP, which featured a remix of the EP's title track from G. Jones. This was also the first track I heard from G. Jones, although I didn't come across it until 2018. On the 28th of October 2017, G. Jones and Eprom would release their first collaborative EP together, titled Acid Disc, featuring their collaborative track, Hysteria, with 2 new tracks from Greg being Transform and Help, I Can't Find My Way Out, and 2 from Eprom being Dark Souls and 666 Acid. The EP is centered around the sound of, you guessed it, acid, a staple in the electronic underground rave scene, and the reason why Roland's famous TB303, the synth responsible for creating this sound, is so popular and so expensive nowadays. The Acid Disc EP would also feature artwork from Jonathan Zawada, who has become famous for his visual work on Flume's recent albums Palaces and the Hi This Is Flume mixtape.
It's all
in
your
In 2018, Greg announced The Ineffable Truth, his debut album scheduling for release on 26th of October 2018. With some huge singles to hype it up, this was looking to be a massive record. And to nobody's surprise, the album was banger after banger, one huge track after another, with ineffable levels of production. While the majority of the album was made up of bangers, there were a select few lower key and more ambient numbers, such as Everything All at Once and Iridescent Leaves Floating Downstream. Repeatedly on this album are sections of tracks that don't conform to a specific tempo and stray into droning ambience or noise. With so many of Greg's contemporaries and peers making music that's designed with DJing in mind, unlike many of the songs on the Ineffable Truth, showing that the ideas and songwriting came first and foremost with this album, and DJ ability came second. As EDM.com would write, quote, "His new album showcases an emotional gravitas and sophisticated musical sensibility unlike any of his previous work," end quote. This album would also feature the driving banger In Your Head, which would go on to become one of Greg's most popular tracks, always being one of the last songs in his shows, like a big grand finale before the encore. In 2019, this track would also go on to get a remix from none other than R.L. Grime. For the much anticipated live tour that accompanied the album, Greg announced he would be playing his biggest tour yet, coming to many states around the US with support from Bleep Bloop, Chi, Saruda, and more. Greg is also known to be a massive fan of Super Mario, and for one of the openers on this tour, he had Beck Abney, a world record Mario Kart 64 speedrunner, play Mario Kart on the big screen before the show. I don't think I've ever heard of somebody having an opening act as wild and left field as that. The tour featured the biggest and most intricate live production he had made for a show so far, with new visuals, lighting, and integrated them more tightly with the music. In the Mixmag live interview, he elaborates more on this.
Another big part of it is that we're creating like custom video assets for every song. And then also one thing that we've never done before that we're going to do on this tour is starting to control lighting cues by sending MIDI out of Ableton to trigger certain, lighting looks in Grand MA, which is the software my lighting designer uses. In terms of the live thing, it's like kind of at the same time doing this pretty complex, like programmed show with lights and video, but then also now trying to program in moments where, like, okay, when I play this song, I'm going to be playing the keys live. If you're someone who's listened to the record a million times, it'll sound kind of similar, but there'll be moments that are new and exciting, I guess.
In 2019, what came next was Porter Robinson's Second Sky Festival, which G. Jones was announced to be playing on the lineup. Greg played his new live show, The Ineffable Truth Live, which was filled with edits and mashups of some of his old music, new unreleased tracks, and pretty much every track off his new album. During this set, through around the middle of it, there was a little hidden gem which to this day has not seen a release and has never been talked about, and I don't think it's talked about enough by the fan base. The song comes in just after the Drift Acid mix and quickly transitions into his older song, Hysteria. The only other time he has played this song, from what I have heard, is in his Secret Sky 2020 online DJ set. It comes in right after a mashup of the AFX remix of 808 State Flow Coma and Luke Vibert's song I Love Acid, after which it is followed by what was at the time an unreleased Eprom demo, which has now been released as Face Bang Acid Mix. To this day, it is still my most anticipated unreleased G. Jones track. The track starts out with this in-your-head style lead melody, with this spacious droning ambience behind it. A vocal then hits, and this dirty bass line comes in right before the track builds up energy with this spoken word vocal. The vocal sounds like it's an extension of the vocal taken from Damon Vale, a collaborative track between G. Jones and Eprom, released on Eprom's Icon EP. The track then explodes into this dubstep style drop, with that dirty bass line coming in and out, along with these very deep bursts of machine gun fire FX placed sporadically throughout the drop. The few times that the track has been played, it has been very short and only an intro, build, drop, and then a breakdown before transitioning to the next track, which leads me to believe that there is more to this track, and hopefully it eventually gets a release. Later in December, Greg announced the Tangential Zones EP, which featured many of the unreleased tracks from his Second Sky set, such as Dream Fatigue, Immortal Light, Dark Artifact, and the aforementioned Drift Acid mix. Oh, and you know that unreleased track I mentioned just before? Well, that wasn't on this EP. Oh well, hopefully next year we would see it come out.
What this is all about is about sharing music. That's what it's always been about. That's why we've always done it. There's nothing new in it in one sense, because ultimately it's about people being drawn together to experience music.
This is music I found when I was searching the
2020, the year of the pandemic, wouldn't see any new releases from Greg, but we did get a few mixes throughout the year, since there were no live in-person events, but these were online mixes with plenty of content to delve into. We had the remote transmission set, which was more like an online version of the Ineffable Truth live show. It featured many unreleased tracks, as well as some new mashups and live versions of songs. To this day, it is still the best recording of these unreleased songs that we have, although I will keep you informed when that changes. Greg also played 2 recorded DJ sets under Illusory OS, which I assume stands for Online Set, one of which was for Secret Sky, Porter Robinson's online version of his music festival, as well as a DJ set for Eamon Tobin's album release party. The album, which featured Zero Face, a collab between G. Jones and Eamon. These more traditional DJ sets showed off Greg's prowess at combining tracks in really intelligent and creative ways, mashing up Aphex Twin with Luke Vibert, Daft Punk with Mr. Oizo, or Eprom and CFAX Acid Crew. Both of these sets felt like 2 30-minute parts of a full 1-hour DJ set, with the credits at the end in the form of a track list with the soothing voice of Bob Ross and Super Mario behind it.
I'd like to say thanks for this time today. A chance to share your world along the way. One day soon, our paths may cross again. Until then.
See you next time!
Something else that happened in 2020 was a little incident on a Skrillex Instagram live, where, while playing a demo he had made, G. Jones popped up in the live chat, which prompted Skrillex to pick up his phone and say he's going to send the beat to G. Jones.
G. Jones, you fuck with this? I'll send this to you right now. So, this is all still new to me, so it's nice to see everybody here. I'll see you soon. G. Jones, look out.
2021 also didn't see any new releases. Instead, tracks were actually lost, as Greg's hard drive died, and over 200 projects were lost with it. This included all the project files for the Ineffable Truth and Tangential Zones, as well as many unreleased tracks and ideas. However, he mentioned that quite a few unreleased tracks like Glowing Experiences and Patterns Emerge had survived. "2022 was a good year for Greg. He released 3 new projects in spite of his hard drive dying the year before. In May, he teamed up with Eprom again for the sequel to the 2017 Acid Disc EP, which featured 6 tracks, 2 being collaborative tracks, and the other 4 alternating between Greg and Eprom. Jonathan Zawada also returned to make the artwork and visuals for this one, which is my personal favourite of the 2.
Illusory tracks.
Later on in the year, Greg announced the first track to his new EP, Illusory Tracks, with the first single, Operator, coming out on the 27th of August 2022. Operator being a previously unnamed track Greg had been playing in his DJ sets and live shows for a few years at that point. After a few weeks, Greg made an unexpected announcement. Upon checking my phone, I expected to get a notification for the announcement of the next single, but instead, Greg made an announcement that he would be teaming up with Eprom again on a collaborative free mixtape titled Disc Doctors, featuring new upcoming tracks from Illusory Tracks, also unreleased tracks, DJ edits, and edits of tracks from both Acid Disc 1 and 2. They even made an acid disc version of the US national anthem. Up next was Rave, a mind-melting track from Greg and Eprom, which I believe is one of the single best tracks of 2022. The track will go on to get praise from many producers online, such as Porter Robinson, as well as Anthony Fantano. I feel like this track is one of those songs that everyone likes, similar to something like Virtual Self Ghost Voices or Aphex Twin's Flim. There's something about that main hook that keeps you to the very end. Greg later on Twitter announced that the unnamed, unreleased song on Disc Doctors was titled Elysian Hardcore, which would be releasing on Illusory Tracks. A few days later, this was followed up by the final EP single, the announcement of Greg's collab with fellow dubstep producer ISOXO, Say What, a track that had been played live by Greg and ISO as far back as 2020. Greg also announced the release date and tracklist for Illusory Tracks. The EP featured Operator, Elysian Hardcore, Rave, Patterns Emerge, Thought Tracing, and Say What. While the number of tracks was in keeping with the usual number of tracks on any of Greg's recent previous EPs, I couldn't help but feel a little disappointed that Patterns Emerge was releasing on this EP, but none of his other unreleased songs such as Glowing Experiences, Abney's Quest, Fourth Mirage, Popular Ego Death, Of All Things, and the unreleased track that he played at Second Sky, which we've been hearing all of these for years now. Illusory Tracks was released on the 23rd of November 2022, and regardless of my disappointments, it's still an incredible collection of tracks that I've had on repeat ever since its release. On January 5th, 2023, G. Jones and Eprom announced that their edit of Coreless Shell Shock would be coming out the next day. While this was in the Disc Doctors mix, it's nice to see it coming out on streaming services too. It's a good thing they released it on the 6th, because a certain other massive song was coming out the day before, and all eyes would have been on that. In their New Year's Eve back-to-back DJ set, Greg and Eprom would also drop a VIP mix of Rave, and while I personally don't think it's nearly as good as the original, it's still a cool new version and interpretation of the track. Have a listen to them side by side. On the 29th of October 2022, G. Jones did a back-to-back DJ set with Porter Robinson as his alias Virtual Self, which promised to combine the bass-heavy IDM-inspired sound of G. Jones with the late 90s to early 2000s trance and hardcore-inspired sound of Virtual Self. However, controversy surrounded the festival before it had even started, the biggest of which being the choice for the festival to not livestream this year's lineup. It is still unknown why they decided to not livestream the festival for 2022, and I doubt we will ever get an explanation. Regardless, we had some heroes in the audience who recorded the whole show in high quality, the names of which are listed on screen. Their recordings will also be linked in the description. This set had so much to unpack upon watching for the first time. Mashups of G. Jones and Virtual Self music, new versions and edits of each other's songs, including G. Jones edits of Virtual Self songs AI Angel and Particle Arts, Virtual Self edits of Dark Artifact and Immortal Light, and unreleased tracks from both of them. Alongside these, they also DJ'd their usual tracks from each other's respective DJ sets, with tracks from Prida, Svetek, Sully, Outphase, Truncate, Zuli, and more. Even with all this material to cram in, they still managed to fit this all into an hour-long set.
Virtual Self
B2B
G. Jones.
Thank you for watching. All the links to everything I talked about in this video will be in the description below. Go there and check G. Jones's music out if you like.